Boom.
All right. Hello there.
Hello there.
Usually we vamp for a little bit, but today we're just going to get right into this. Hey, everybody. Welcome to You Have to Watch This podcast. I'm Alan.
I'm Ryan.
And joining us from Nerfhearders Assemble podcast, our friends Seth and Josh. Welcome, guys.
I was really worried there for a second. I was like, you didn't tell me I was gonna have to say my name or something.
I know. He's just like space out there. It's like,
Here comes.
Yeah. I would hope that you would know your name, but I apologize for throwing that at you. Today we're going to do a full season review of Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus. Before we get into that, we have a little bit of business to take care of. This weekend, Ryan and I will be at Main Street Comic-Con in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. I've got everything off to the side ready to go for our giveaways. I've got the framed Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings poster staring at me. The Mandarin is like glaring at me this whole show, so just remember that as you're watching and listening. We've got a lot of fun giveaways. I've tried not to break into the candy as much as possible, but one box of Swedish Fish is gone, but I will replace it. It's going to be a fun time. Hope to see you there. Details are on our Facebook page and in the Twitch chat right now. Ryan, are you excited?
Yeah, I am. I'll actually be going to a con for the podcast finally.
Yeah. Now, Josh, you do a lot of conventions. Do you have any tips for Ryan since this is his first con as a exhibitor?
Bring a
as an
chair.
exhibitor, sure. Bring water. Bring stuff to hydrate. Bring a personal fan if you can. Go to like a Walmart or something and get like a $7 fan. And dress to stay cool because I mean, depending on how crazy it is there, lots of people can get really crowded, and even if you're behind a table, you can get a little claustrophobic and need some space to breathe and cool down. So yeah, otherwise just have a good time and drink a lot of energy drinks because it keeps you busy.
Yeah.
I don't think there will be people handing out C4 like I'm used to from New York Comic Con, but
Oh my God, Alan and I collected so much C4. It was we were in the sweet spot that the people with the C4 bags would just always walk past us, and if they didn't have a flavor we wanted, they were close enough to go get it. And we, like 2 days in, we just had like an amass of C4 cans just waiting for the rest of the weekend. It was fantastic.
yeah, we were collecting them like they were Infinity Stones. So
Yes.
Hopefully that happens at Waynesboro, but
There you go.
if not
C4, I hope you're listening.
if not, we'll stop at Sheets beforehand. But yeah, so hope to see everyone there this weekend. Now we're going to move on to our We Watch This segment where we talk about things that we've watched over the past week. Ryan, I think your pick was one that most of us have seen. What have you been watching?
Well, The Boys. I wasn't on watching the season as soon as it launched. It was a little bit after that I finally started watching it, but I got caught up with everything like 2 nights ago, and I'm happy with it so far.
Season three.
Yes, with season 3. It's each season 2 was crazier than season 1, and so far season 3 is crazier at this point than all of season 2 was. So it's not disappointing, and I don't really think how it could be at this point.
I think the first episode amped it up further than some of the other seasons combined did.
Oh yeah.
Just in like one scene, honestly.
Oh yeah. They've got the violence. They've got the grotesque nature. They've got, without any spoilers, they got Homelander to his max potential. There was a lot of stuff that after the finale of season 2, I was like, are we gonna have to wait a whole season for this to kick off with Homelander? And nope. It's immediate, and it's everything I want. And they're just leaning into it now. Like, I don't know if you follow them on Twitter, but they've been teasing an orgy for the end of this week, and they're just like, if you think it's been grotesque yet, it's only gonna get worse. And I can't imagine. Amazon must just be like, blank check, whatever you want to do. We don't need to approve.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, I've been following most of the cast on Instagram, and I forget her name, but Starlight, the actress, posted some pictures of some of the props, and she even said, like, posting this picture might get me kicked off of Instagram, but I don't care, and she posted it anyway.
I can only imagine.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, my father-in-law just started watching The Boys, so he's still in season 1 as far as I know. And I cannot wait to not be in the room with him when he watches season 3's premiere.
My gosh.
So-
I watched it with the wife, and even she was like, what the fuck? And she's seen everything else up until that point. But yeah.
Yeah, I
It's a
watched it
lot.
with Cece, and she was wildly uncomfortable.
It was uncomfortable for me.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I
It
get
was
that.
pretty bad. Honestly, I'm afraid I'm getting kind of desensitized to this stuff. I'm gonna blame The Boys and Invincible especially because they were both pretty over that line. But yeah, I was behind on watching The Boys when it first came out because what did they do, Josh? They did like 3 episodes right off the bat.
Yeah,
Or-
2 or
or
3
the
at the
first
beginning.
two-
Yeah, then
yeah, I
it's been
can't-
weekly. Yeah.
Well, I was behind, and then and of course Josh is like, "Hey, have you seen this yet? Have you seen this yet? Have you watched it? I want to talk about it."
Gotta
I'm
keep
like,
you up to
"Shit,
date,
no,
bro."
I haven't. And then and then I watched the first episode. I think the first message I sent back to you is just like, I'm convinced Amazon just doesn't watch their episodes before they let them post them at this point. Like, just like, no, fuck it, let it go, let it happen.
Jeffrey Bezos doesn't care.
No, he's got that
Probably
fuck
not
you
watching.
money. He's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
done.
All right. Anything else on The Boys?
I mean,
I mean, not spoiler free.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, keeping it spoiler free and keeping it to like just my opinion of it. That's it.
Okay. I am excited to see more of Jason Eccles as Soldier Boy. He's been in the marketing, so I don't think that's really a spoiler. But I only know him from Smallville. I've never watched Supernatural, so I've got like a whole 15-year gap of his career. So I'm
Do we-
excited to
do
see.
we know
That's
how many-
right. He was the football coach for
Yeah.
the high school in Smallville,
Yep.
and he was dating Lana. That
Uh-huh.
was weird. Oh, that's right.
And then right
Totally forgot
after
about
that, the year after that, he started Supernatural. So
That's right. Oh my god,
Yeah.
that brings it back. I
Mhm.
totally forgot he was in Smallville. Wow.
Do we know how many episodes the season is? Josh, did you jump on that already?
I have no idea. I
It's
don't
like-
know.
I will
I'm
say
sure I
I'm
could
getting a
Google
little annoyed by these 6-episode series, but
Oh,
I
it's going
imagine
past
that The
6
Boys is going to
episodes
be
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the last season was like 8.
all right. Well, that does it for our review of the mini review of The Boys. I'm going to do a spoiler-free review of a movie I saw this weekend. Disney Pixar's Lightyear. I went to this movie excited because I grew up with Toy Story. I grew up with Buzz Lightyear. And I was very disappointed in this movie.
Oh gosh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was just boring. And if Pixar is marketing this movie as what Andy saw to make him love Buzz Lightyear, I'm very concerned with Andy's taste in movies.
I've avoided trailers, but you're not the third person that have said that. So I guess that's the. I did not know that, but I keep on hearing that. Is that like the opener? Like, do
Yeah.
they show Andy walking into a theater to see the movie or something? Or
I wish they did. It opens with the text in 1995. Andy saw a movie that made him love Buzz Lightyear. This is that movie.
oh, so they tell you. They don't.
They
even
tell you.
It's tell,
Oh,
don't show.
jeez.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Not
I
even
was
a little bit of nostalgia. Okay.
I was seeing the reviews coming through for this movie, and I'll tell you because the same thing happened just now. So I typed in Lightyear, and it was top stories about Lightyear, and it's all like, and I'm gonna say this because I don't know if it's necessarily a spoiler because it's every news story basically. So apparently there's a same-sex kiss in the movie,
Mhm.
and the top articles are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the top articles that popped up on Google as soon as they did it are all about that. And then the other one is Lightyear Zero is partially a solar electric vehicle. So I don't think that's related.
No,
I
I guess
guess
so.
But yeah, sitting at 76% on Rotten Tomatoes, 5.5 on IMDb, or 5.2 on IMDb, and 46% of users liked this movie. and I assumed that
Why
it was
didn't you like
because
it, Alan?
I
What was-
assumed it was
what
because of a
wrong with it?
same-sex kiss, and that was like just everybody
Yeah.
blowing up about it.
It was fine. Being a kids movie, it was actually kind of ambitious with the kind of sci-fi story they were telling. But Chris, I think the cast was fine. It looks great. Just the story itself it got to the point where it was just repetitive and not exciting. But visually it's great. I will say there are 3 post-credit scenes, and one they make you wait until the very, very end, like after the Disney logo comes up and like the projector would usually turn off. There's a post-credit scene, and it did not need 3 post-credit scenes.
They are Marvel. What the heck?
Yeah. And I was hoping
Even Marvel isn't that ambitious with them.
Yeah.
They only do 2 at the most.
Yeah, it was that put me over the edge of not liking the movie, because I was like, okay, maybe the post-credit scenes will redeem it a little bit and give me something that I can say is like, oh, that was cool. I want to see more of this story, but there was nothing there for that. But
Was it setting up a sequel?
it was, yeah, the very last one was the other
Disney, Seth. It's Disney. Come on.
I mean, we're talking Disney Pixar at
Yeah.
this point. Like, it's not as telltale.
the first 2 were just jokes, and that's what made me be like, okay, well, why? Like, I get it. Like, I'm all for a good joke post-credit scene, like Bruce Campbell and Multiverse of Madness, but
That's a good one.
it just didn't stick the landing for me, and I was disappointed. The 3D was cool. I ended up seeing it in 3D, not by choice, just by circumstances, but I enjoyed that.
Is 3D
Animated
not your first
3D
choice?
usually looks
then,
cool.
or-
It's not. I was in town running errands and had time to kill, so I was like, okay, what's the next showing of Lightyear? 3D. Okay, I'll pay the extra. If I have to see anything in 3D, I want it to be a Pixar computer animated movie anyway. So, but yeah,
So you're telling me it wouldn't have been better if they went with Chris Pratt? Because apparently he's got a voice acting renaissance going on here with Garfield and Super Mario. This sounds, right up his alley.
Garfield?
yeah, he's
Yeah.
playing Garfield.
Mhm.
No,
They're
Chris,
doing
I-
that one again?
He's in Garfield, or he's playing Garfield?
He's
He's playing
playing
Garfield. And he's playing Mario in another one. Yeah.
I heard about the Mario one. That seemed
Yeah.
weird, but
No,
Garfield though, like that. No. I
of
can't
the
get on board
Chris's
there.
they chose well. Chris Evans is great. The story is a little bit of a man out of time kind of story, so it just kind of, I think that probably played into it too, like feeling repetitive. Like you doing a man out of time story and it's Chris Evans' voice, and you just had 10 years of him as Captain America being the man out of
Sure.
time. It's like
It's
probably
got
change it
plot
up a
point
bit.
down.
Kind of
but,
weird. He's a man out of time with a cat sidekick and kind of like an Air Force-y sort of thing. Sounds like
Yeah.
Captain Marvel all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
it does.
Yeah, it's a little bit of Captain Marvel mixed with Interstellar. So
That sounds amazing, though, but it's
It
not.
does.
it
Like,
does. Yeah. Like on paper, there's a lot to like about this movie.
On paper.
It just doesn't hold up. I wish it was better than it was.
Maybe movies just don't really play well from the Toy Story universe. Maybe that's why the toys come alive, because there needs to be some balance in reality. I mean, like
But it's not-
in reality where toys can live, the movie's got to suck. It's one or the other.
But it's not like the toys are putting on a show for Andy to entertain them. So
They could, though. There
They
is
could.
that possibility.
absolutely.
Well, somewhere
Maybe
Tim
maybe
Allen
some of
is
the
probably
allure is in the
laughing.
mystery, though, is like not knowing that they were like
Mhm.
like it was an action figure based off of a movie or anything like that.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I can't wait for the spin-off film RC the movie. So
Yeah.
Also, I'll definitely wait for Disney Plus to show it up.
yeah, and it's because it's
That's
only
for
like
sure.
it's only like a month and a half now that you have to wait, because Doctor
Mm-hmm.
Strange came out the beginning of May and it just premiered yesterday. So
Well, I think they should just put that franchise to death. or to bed, not to death. I'd rather see a sequel to Toy Soldiers with your little guy in the background there than a sequel to Toy Story.
Small
Another
Soldiers,
sequel to Toy Story.
dude.
Oh yeah, Small Soldiers, not Toy Soldiers. It's close enough. I love Small Soldiers. That was a badass movie.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts on Lightyear. I have spoiler thoughts, but I'm not going to share them here because you guys haven't seen the movie. But once you do, I'll let you know more about why I didn't like it. So, all right.
Okay.
Seth, I believe you watched a movie.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a new movie to me or anything like that. It's just like so. I was scrolling through trying to find something to watch in the background while I do like various video and photo editing, and The Fugitive popped up on my HBO feed, and I was like, hey, I haven't seen that in fucking forever. So I was like, I'm gonna dive right into that. Mainly because of Harrison Ford. Hey, let's be fair. The movie itself, it wasn't quite as spectacular as I remember it being when I saw it as like kind of as I would have been around like 15 at the time. That I saw it. It's like even then wasn't a new viewing, and I mean it wasn't as much of a thrill ride as I remember it being at that time, but it still like holds up. Like it's still a good film. Harrison Ford obviously does an excellent job, especially out of the Star Wars franchise. He seems to be the only like actor who ended up AAA after all of that, and he shows why. Especially in The Fugitive. Like I actually think that The Fugitive probably doesn't get talked about quite as much just for his particular performance, not necessarily for the movie as a whole.
I feel like acting wise, Tommy Lee Jones gets a lot more credit for The Fugitive than Harrison Ford.
For sure. Which I think is why the sequel is more catered towards him.
But Ford was great in it. I mean, he really was. It was a great role for him.
Tommy Lee Jones. It feels like Tommy Lee Jones in that movie is just playing Tommy Lee Jones. And that might have been the film that established his typecast for like the rest of his movies.
I was going to say you could say that about anything that he's in. He feels like he's playing himself.
Yeah, he's got a very similar mannerism in just about every single thing that he does. He's very I don't like it feels like that militaristic style, you know, like it's like the same as the drill instructor that he played in Captain America. It's like that commanding presence, do what he says, or there's no other way. It's his way or the highway. Like that very like not necessarily macho, but kind of in the same
assertive.
Yeah. Throughout the whole thing.
Well, he stole. Tommy Lee Jones stole that movie. He was fantastic, and I read something the other day that his line, what's his biggest line in the movie?
I don't care.
Yeah,
I heard that wasn't scripted. Like I saw that in an article that was not in the script, and I'm like, leave it to him to come up with that, and it'd be like the most iconic line in the movie.
It didn't feel scripted, so I'm not surprised to see that. Like, cause. I mean, that was the coolest thing. And then they write it into like kind of like part of a major phone call that they have later on in the movie. Like it's like like that ends up being really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I rewatched it like 4 days ago, and I had to replay it twice to kind of like get like everything that was going on. Because the first time I watched it, I was pausing so much because I was doing video editing that time.
Yeah.
And you can't watch anything effectively while video editing between Premiere crashing your video setup and just generally being laggy as hell. I was pausing left and right. Then the second time I watched it, I got interrupted like halfway through, and then I didn't watch it again. And so I went back like I think it was only like 3 times. The third time I was doing photo editing, nice and quiet, watched it through the whole thing, and I was like, this is cool. I'm into this. Like this will be part of like the rewatch stuff that I do for stuff like that. It was a good time. Again though, not quite as I feel like the plot like the mystery around the killing of his wife comes in awful late, and they kind of like scramble to put that sort of together, and mainly for the audience at that point. Like they spend a lot of time chasing
it's called The Fugitive, not the Detective.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it felt like they had those two plots and they weren't necessarily sure which one they wanted to be at the forefront, and then
Sure.
they found the Fugitive one so good and compelling that they're like, oh crap, we had this other one, we got to get this in here still.
Well,
And-
well, I think that's because it's based off of the TV show. Like the whole one-armed man thing is the plot of the TV show from the 70s or 80s.
Right. Right.
So, Josh, how about you? Have you watched anything The Fugitive related recently?
Yeah. So
How convenient.
unlike I don't think it is convenient. It's weird. Unlike Seth, I can't watch movies when I do stuff. I can listen to podcasts and everything, but I can't watch movies. So when I've gone through all my podcasts, like half of my subscriptions on YouTube are movie reactors, so I can listen to them watching a movie. And usually it's like a 15-20 minute video of them just kind of, they skip to the highlights of the movie because they don't show them watching a whole movie on YouTube. And I swear there's an algorithm because they all eventually watch the same film. Like you'll see 5-6 different accounts watching the same film over a couple of weeks. And I don't know how it happens, but The Fugitive, like 3 different reactor channels were watching The Fugitive last week. And I was like, I haven't seen that in a long time. So I watched The Fugitive over the weekend. And
Is
then
it
I
an
was like,
anniversary or something, maybe?
maybe it is. And then I was like, you know what I want to watch now? I don't want to go to bed. I want to watch the sequel to The Fugitive. So I watched U.S. Marshal, and I love that film. There was a time where people did not know that film existed, and or not that it existed, but that it was related to The Fugitive. And it's got the full cast from The Fugitive minus Harrison Ford, and I loved it. It had Wesley Snipes in it, like Wesley Snipes in his prime. It had young Robert Downey Jr. in it. But then it had the entire cast of The Fugitive, which made it even better. Like Tommy Lee Jones was visibly a little older, but everybody was still cranky and sassy and everything to each other, and they were chasing after Snipes, and add that with some Wesley Snipes kung fu and everything, and it was fantastic.
It came out August 6th of '93, so it's not an anniversary. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they had the same thing that happened to me because it just showed up in my HBO Max feed, and U.S. Marshals kept popping up in my Netflix feed.
Yeah.
And
HBO
so when
Max
you
is
told me
pushing
that,
it, yeah.
when you told me today in our chat after finding out that it was wacky that we had just seen it, I was like, oh, okay, I'll pop it in there. I'm through like the first half hour, but it's good.
You
Good
know
so
your true podcast co-host when you watch the same movie unintentionally.
Yeah,
Unintentionally. We can't
that
watch the same movie on purpose, but every time we've tried to go to see The Northman together. That didn't work. We've tried to schedule other things that we'd seen together, and like fate intervenes every time. But now the one time that we had no connection about this, we end up watching the same movie.
We can't watch new stuff at the same time on purpose.
Even when
It
we
was
buy
like-
the tickets together, something happens, and then we don't end up seeing it.
Yeah.
It's weird.
All right. Well, yeah, that was so funny in the chat earlier. I was like, I gotta work that into the show somehow. So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, it's all good. So that does it for our We Watched This segment, and now we're gonna get into what we're here to talk about: the series/season finale and full season of Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus. If you missed it, I was lucky enough to join Seth and Josh on Nerfhearders Assemble Tuesday night to talk about what we were expecting from the finale of Obi-Wan. So we'll get into spoilers later on. But just to catch everyone up, we're going to do a little bit of spoiler free, give our thoughts on the season overall, and then get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen Obi-Wan Kenobi yet, stick around for a little bit. We're going to just talk broadly about it. Who wants to go first?
I can give the most basic response. A lot of people have asked me, "What did you think of the show, all in all?" And I'll just say the same thing. I think of it just like I think of the prequels. There's some cool things in the prequels. There's a lot of stuff in the prequels, and it's got one hell of a finale. And that's exactly how I feel about Kenobi. I've seen a lot of people go hard, hate this. I see a lot of people go hard, love this. It's the best Star Wars ever. I think it's better than Boba Fett, and that's not saying a lot. But it's there was highlights in this show. There was a lot of muddy stuff in the middle that they could have that we didn't really need. But all in all, I had a really good time, and I really do think the finale on several points was just fantastic. So yeah, that's me.
Seth, how about you?
Oh, okay. You can get us out of the way first.
Yeah.
So I have something that I needed to look up before I continued on. So somebody else should jump in
Okay,
there first.
Ryan, how about you?
Overall, I liked it. Like, I pretty much like anything Star Wars. Like, I am seriously a generic, simple fan. Like, give me some TIE fighters, give me just something in the Star Wars world, and I'm usually content with it. And that's really what I felt about this. There were some really awesome moments in it, but if I had to rank it amongst, like, the entire timeline of what they've come out with so far, like, it's kind of below middle of the pack for me. So that's where I'm at with it.
Okay. I'm kind of where Josh is. Like there were some things in this that were very strange, weird choices. But I think the finale really was strong. I will watch Ewan McGregor in almost anything. I think there's some great use of newer technology in this production wise. Like the fact that the lightsabers actually light up now, like, just makes the lightsaber fights so much better for me. But I really enjoyed the series. I would put it up there with The Mandalorian as one of my favorite Star Wars things that Disney has done.
So I'd put
Disney has done. That's a good specifier there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll put the finale up in there with The Mandalorian. I will not put the whole show. Honestly, this series, especially with the finale, it kind of like reaffirmed my feeling that this should have been a longer series. So for The Mandalorian, they've done 8 episodes for both seasons. I feel like doing 6 for Obi-Wan might have been part of the problem. It does feel like there might have been a lot of stuff cut out pre-production in an effort to, because there was a script change that they went around to make some adjustments, and we might never know what those things actually were unless somebody digs in and interviews the right person. But I feel like there's a lot of stuff that should have been in this show that wasn't, but thankfully not so much stuff that is in the show that shouldn't have been, which I think is good. Like the time that they used, I feel like they used pretty decently well, but I felt like it needed more time in order to kind of flesh things out a little bit better. But I will say again that the finale is there's some top tier Star Wars moments in there, and it does kind of adjust the way that you would watch the rest of Star Wars media involving these particular characters, at least in a good way.
Yeah,
in a good way.
Okay. I'm trying to think of another way to go about this before getting into spoilers. Can you guys think of anything to talk about spoiler free before we get into details?
I mean, Leia's like the best part of the series. Arguably the best part of the series. Kind of tough, but yeah.
I would just say, we talked about this a little bit on Tuesday, how something like this that is sorry about that. Something like this that is squeezed in between canon so tightly. We've talked about how we'd love to have a Star Wars property that's 1,000 years in the past or 1,000 years in the future from this Skywalker saga, and they're not bound by canon. For something that is so tight, I think this show did what it needed to do. It was, in my view, overall, it was a compelling story. It didn't change canon. It didn't screw up like that, where we've seen other shows that it's like, did you not? We've seen Star Wars movies that it's like, did you not watch the movie that came before this when you wrote this movie? You know, so at least for the most part, this show, while it's not like it, I still feel like there's nothing like bombastic about this. You could not watch this show and still, you know, watch episode 3 and then episode 4 and you'll be fine. But there's just, it just adds a little bit more depth and stuff in the finale for someone that's watched the prequels and really liked a lot of the things they did with these characters. It really felt like that payoff. That it's why I appreciated the Clone Wars, because they fleshed certain character dynamics out and certain relationships. And by the end of this show, I was like, you know, that's all I really wanted from this show. That's what they gave me, and I didn't walk away pissed off that they totally dropped the ball on something or totally screwed something up. And so I think that's it might have been a low expectation, but that's really all I expected from this series, and I came out really happy that's what I got.
Ryan,
I mean,
you look like you had something to say.
Well, no, I'm just listening. I mean,
Okay.
I feel like most of us, even though we kind of explained it differently, I feel like most of us are kind of on the same page with this. We all enjoyed it. There were moments that we definitely liked more than others. But as things go, like the fan base has been asking for a Kenobi series or a movie forever, as long as I can remember, about that space, about that time that he was on Tatooine. And for better or for worse, this is what that was. I enjoyed it. So,
Seth, you had something?
I was just gonna say, it was like, well, we'll see how much we all agree on and disagree on once we start getting into spoiler territory.
yeah.
Because like there's certain details that like of it, like every single time we do a review on, almost every single time we do a review on Nerfhearders, like if I run into a bunch of stuff where things have been wrong, I go into writer mode and I'm like, okay, well here's how this should have gone. Which, of course, in hindsight is always going to be easier, but I'm not on the Star Wars writing team, so I don't get to do anything about that.
One day you'll get there.
But yeah, hopefully it'd be great. Sam Neill follows you on Twitter. Maybe he's got the connect. Help me out here, bro.
Yeah. All right. I think with that, we should throw up the spoiler warning just to open up the conversation a little bit more. So if you have not seen the full season of Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus, this is your official spoiler warning. And where's the graphic? There we go. Spoiler alert is up. So let's get into it. Seth, how do you really feel?
Put me on the spot. Okay, so we said it in our spoiler review of like this of the series right before the finale. And a big part of my problem with this series is that it seemed like they were trying to split it off into too many different directions as far as what they wanted to cover, is like whether it was the plot about getting Leia back or whether it was the plot of Obi-Wan kind of dealing with his PTSD. Now, like I said, it was like there's stuff missing that I would have liked to have seen, but the stuff that we saw was still in a good vein. Like it was a good attempt. I feel like they stuck the landing here, but I would like to know, and because I don't dig into stuff super deep, I don't get to know if there were a bunch of production issues as far as why. I know they were filming during COVID and that made things wildly complicated. So is there a reason that they didn't go with 8 episodes like they had, like they did for Mandalorian? Boba Fett's pretty forgettable, so I don't remember if they did 8 episodes. I don't think they did. I think they only did 6 for Boba Fett. I don't know why I didn't look that part up.
I'm not sure.
There's going to be 7 episodes of the book Boba Fett. So we got 2 8-episode seasons with The Mandalorian around a character who is completely fresh and new and dealing with mostly areas of characters who were not related to the original pieces of Star Wars media. And then when they did include those, it was in a very good way. And then we got Boba Fett, which they cut it down an episode and then filled it mostly with a character who we now kind of have a hard time caring about. At least I don't give a shit about Boba Fett at this point, which is really sad. And then we get 6 episodes with a character who we really already did care about. And then it's like, okay, did you leave us wanting more because you wanted to do another season of this? Or did you leave us wanting more because you guys had to cut some stuff out because it just wasn't working? Like I said before, I think that the majority of this series could have been focused on kind of like a very suspenseful cat and mouse game between Obi-Wan and Vader, perpetuated by the Inquisitors. We could have used a little bit more time to see Reva kind of like working these angles to sort of get revenge, because it didn't really seem that way at all until like the final point. And then even then it was kind of odd that was the direction that she chose to use. And then especially in the finale, going after Luke as some sort of justice or revenge, felt like that could have been a little like we almost needed like a Reva episode, you know, like it would have been nice to have one episode devoted specifically to her perspective. I was right when I told Cece, she was sitting next to me, and I was like, oh, we're going to see one of those younglings. I can guarantee it. And sure enough, Reva ended up being one of them. And everybody on Twitter was like, oh no, that was just show on The Purge. And then boom, there she was.
Oh,
it would have been great to get her.
I thought that was pretty.
I thought it was
clear
obvious
that-
too, but
yeah.
there were people who were like, "Oh, why were the younglings there? It didn't mean anything." Like, because they're going to be in the show later. It was just odd that we didn't see like what would have been wildly suspenseful and really scary, because they did a great job making Vader scary in this again. Is that cat and mouse game between Obi-Wan and Vader, and seeing him kind of like skate by a little bit, realizing it's like, well, I have to face him, which he did do. Like, I have to face him. I have to end this. And then seeing something about like the motivation behind Reva and what she wants to be involved in, because it seems pretty apparent that she's probably going to have a part to play in future Star Wars content. If I had to guess, Moses Ingram is really, really good. And so I hope that we see her again, because her character actually is pretty interesting. So it would be nice. But yeah, I feel like they cut this down when they really shouldn't have done so. But I don't know.
I mean, I'm not going to...
I could go on and on and on and on and on.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I would have loved to have more episodes of this. There are parts that feel like it could have been a little bit more fleshed out. But I really think part of the reason they did the 6-episode structure was to follow, like we talked about on Tuesday, alluding to the 6 scheme, rhyming the 6 films. Ryan, have you heard about this?
No.
Each episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi has a reference to that corresponding film in the Skywalker saga. So the first episode, you have little Luke pod racing, like Anakin did in episode 1, and episode 2, you've got the underworld city scape that you're introduced to on Coruscant in episode 2. Episode 3, you have the fight between Vader and Obi-Wan, where somebody gets burned. Episode 4 is rescuing Princess Leia from a fortress. Episode 5 is the escape from the Rebel base, and then the finale is just a duel.
Well, it's another Jedi. It's a Jedi coming into his power and
it's
facing
wheezing.
Vader.
Yeah.
It's wheezing. It's Vader wheezing.
It's wheezing.
Yeah. And you could say it's a redemption.
They said it was going to be a limited series, unlike all the other shows that you mentioned, Seth. Kathleen Kennedy from the beginning always said this was going to be a limited series, and
good.
Granted, that is not always 6, but that is granted. Now she hasn't reneged on that, but she has said, well, we intended it to be a limited series, but if the fans want, consider a second season.
No,
I don't think they should.
No, that's spoiling your fans and to not good service. Like that like what we really want isn't always what we should have when it comes to an art
I
form
don't want
such
it.
as this.
I don't want it.
I
I don't want it either.
I trust Ewan McGregor enough that if the story isn't strong enough that he won't do it. Like I know he really wants, like, he's open to coming back as the character. I don't know if it's in a series form, but you've got other stories that you can tell that don't focus on him, but you could bring him into the fold.
Yeah. But I agree. I think Riva should have had. I was waiting for the Riva episode. It was almost like it was bound to happen. Every time there's this type of narrative structure, there's always now we're going to cut and do a flashback episode to give you the details of this person. And it was almost like they were being so vague about her that I was just waiting for it to happen. And I have not read of any behind the scenes stuff where they cut out an episode or COVID stopped them from filming. So if it happened, Disney's been very hush hush on it. But as much, I did love the finale, but I love the finale for the non-Riva parts, because the Riva part made no sense to me. Like, I've seen a lot of people saying, how did she know that Luke was Vader's son? And I watched it twice. I don't know that she knows that. I don't know that she knows who Luke is at all, and I don't know why she's there, other than that she found something that said Ben, Tatooine, the boy. That's it, right? Did I miss something? Or
That was pretty much the gist of it. Yeah.
did she ever confirm that she knows who Luke is or why she's chasing Luke?
I don't think they confirm it, but even if she doesn't know who Luke is at that point, she's going there to attack someone who's important to Obi-Wan. Like, that's why
Right, and
Obi-Wan was hiding
That's
out.
what it felt like
why?
to me,
Yeah.
is that she might have even thought that it was Obi-Wan's child.
And,
Because-
I knew she knew it was a message for Obi-Wan, but she had just been stabbed by Vader for the second time. So was
I
her
think
motivation
I
to
think the
kill
first
the
time.
child to be more like Vader? Is that what the point?
I think
is
it
that
was
what
to-
she was trying to do.
I think it was to get revenge on Obi-Wan for using her to stall Vader.
Because Vader even told her that, basically.
They could have made that more clear, because
Yeah.
I was confused as to what she was doing there. Yeah, I didn't get it, and I watched it twice.
Yeah, there were a lot of moments like that for me with this, and I think it suffered from having only the 6 episodes, and because there were a lot of jumps and transitions that really threw me off or just made me stop. And for example, we see her, groaning after getting a lightsaber to the gut on the ground, and the start of the very next episode, she's
She's maintaining it pretty damn well.
there's that, and she's also showing up at places extremely quick.
Yeah, it felt like Game of
Throughout the
Thrones
whole
final
series.
season to me.
Yeah,
The whole
like,
finale had that syndrome really bad.
They were just like,
Yeah.
oh, light speed means I can be on another planet in minutes.
yeah,
So-
because
so-
it,
It's like, how many parsecs was Tatooine
I'm glad
from
this came
wherever
up.
Obi-Wan
Yeah.
was fighting at.
The
Yeah.
timeline of Star Wars things never makes sense. Like, how long was Luke on Dagobah training with Yoda while Han and Leia were in the Cloud City? Like, if you
Yeah.
go, like,
This made it seem like it was over the course of a couple hours.
the way
It was
I
weird.
look at the finale is everything that happens with Reva on Tatooine takes place like either during or after the fight with Vader. Like, just the way they tell the story, that that's how it happens, but they present it intercut. So
Without
like,
a
was
proper
Kenobi's
explanation, like
premonition
there
of
was
the future?
definitely a.
Was Kenobi looking
I don't
into the future when he saw Luke fall, or because
No, I don't
they
think
filmed
so.
it and almost like Luke's falling, jump to light speed, like
I think
that's how it felt.
I think this was another instance of where the editing might have fallen a little bit short, because based on where the homestead is on Tatooine versus where Reva actually encountered Luke and had her moment of mercy, like all the way in Beggar's Canyon. It's like, okay, well, how far of a walk would that have actually been to get there? And then to the amount of time that it took her to go through all of that, and then all the amount of time it took for her to haul him back in her weakened state. Like, I do wonder if it was just a poor representation of the timeline. Second of all, I don't feel like Obi-Wan needed to be there in that moment. Like, it would have it like we had predicted that Owen was going to kill her before the finale actually aired, and while I'm glad that didn't happen, I'm also upset that it didn't happen, because that would have been pretty interesting.
I mean, based on
Terrible
what we see in the finale, I would have been more than happy to have Aunt Beru do it, because she was ready to go.
So apparently she's a
she made
sleeper.
Contact. That was like, whoo, there she is.
Yeah, I think it was just editing, and again, like it probably had something to do with there only being like another thing that we got kind of cut out on is like we thought that this final episode was going to be longer, and then as it turns out, there was like the airtime that got leaked out that was going to be an hour and a half was also wrong, because this ended up being 51 minutes, and that's including credits. And so, like, I think with it being cut down to 6 episodes and them having to cram all this stuff in there, like the show did suffer for it to a certain degree, and not being able to illustrate what was actually going on there would have been part of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I will admit, when I was watching it the first time in the beginning, I was getting nervous because it starts off, and we kind of joked about it. I hope this whole episode isn't one ship chasing the other ship, and it starts off like that.
Oh yeah.
And then we see a series of scenes where Obi-Wan keeps on walking in and out of the main room saying, I have to do this. And there's like 6 of those scenes before he actually leaves the ship, and I was like, oh god, is this gonna be half of the episode of him saying I'm gonna leave the ship? And I got nervous because it was like, you already walked out of the room, and then the next scene he's walking back in the room and he's talking to Leia, and then he walks away, and then the next scene he's talking to Ice Cube Jr., and then he goes back and talks to Leia again, and I'm like, how many times are you gonna say goodbye? Like, just go. And then they did go, and the best part of the episode started. Is the final Vader Kenobi under the moon showdown. And that scene, I'm not saying I hated the Reva stuff. The Reva stuff was fine, but thankfully they didn't cut away from it too much, and they kept the Reva stuff short, because I was just like, I know Reva's not going to kill him. Get back to the fight. But at least there was enough of the fight that they could cut away a couple times, and there was still plenty more to see. But, I mean, clearly that was the highlight of the episode. That fight was everybody that thought Episode 4 fight was lackluster, or Episode 4, A New Hope, or, the first showdown between those two and Kenobi was lackluster. They definitely amped it up in this one. They gave you everything and more.
Well, I feel like the thing that upset me most is that there weren't any parallels between the two scenes, which would have been a really creative time to do something like that, because we already had like kind of like an established things, like where Owen is there with Reva at the beginning, kind of like almost staring her down, really, and kind of like not showing any of that fear. And then the conversation between Anakin and Obi-Wan, while it was heart-wrenching and I did cry, like I was shedding tears in that moment, there wasn't as much of a dialogue as I was really hoping for. So there wasn't really that master learner moment that I was hoping to have happen. But when they were cutting back and forth between the scenes, we weren't seeing like a parallel between the two. And it would have been really interesting to see the fight between Owen and Beru and Reva kind of like match sort of the cadence of the fight. And then at the ending of it, when it gets right down to it, when Obi-Wan is given the chance to kill Vader again, which he bypasses to try and show mercy, we see Owen and Beru doing the same thing for Reva, and for different reasons, but or killing her, and kind of showing like the different way that that Owen actually interacts with something like that. When he sees a threat towards Luke, he actually wipes him out. because he didn't have any connection to Reva. He didn't have an emotional tie.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't going to be difficult for him to pull the trigger on that. But like they bounced it around so much, and again, like the Reva
He
stuff
did pull
was
the
just
trigger.
well, he did.
It
He
was a terrible shot.
He was a terrible shot, and had the jump on her too. It was a horrible, horrible shot. But I don't. It's clear that I don't think he does a hell of a lot of shooting.
Who taught Luke to shoot womp rats? Because it wasn't his uncle. It
Aunt
wasn't
Beru.
Owen.
Aunt Beru.
Oh,
Absolutely.
maybe.
Yeah,
I guarantee
100% Aunt Beru.
Absolutely guarantee it was Aunt
Did
Beru.
she also teach him hand-to-hand combat? Because she's got that down. I mean, she got that punch in or slap or whatever it was, but it was vicious.
Well, anybody can punch somebody in the face from concealment, but yeah.
And Luke can not kick them in the face, and they still fall over. If you know that.
I was
freeze
waiting
frame
for
from-
Reva to utter
yes.
some. I was waiting for Reva to utter some Russian, and Beru just responds back to her in a perfect Russian accent, saying like she's some sleeper agent or some shit.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it turns out you kill Luke. I'm gonna go John Wick on you. Thank you. Beru.
So the fight between let's talk about the fight between Anakin or between Vader and Obi-Wan. Because there was a moment where I was really expecting Vader to say, "Now I have the high ground," and it didn't happen.
He didn't have to.
They rose
didn't
above,
have to.
They rose above that.
They set that up specifically.
They took
so
the high
fans
ground.
would say
Yeah,
it.
They
like,
took
they were
they
like,
took the high ground. The writers did. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's a lot of people, a lot of reactors were like, he's gonna say it, and he didn't, and I'm like, and that's
One of
why
my
you
favorite-
fail as a
one of my favorite reactors had a line drop in there that would have made everybody cringe, and he just said that this scene rocks.
Yeah.
and I couldn't help I was laughing like a little girl while like it was so good.
I love the setup. I didn't look at a lot of the concept art, but just Vader walking off his ship, and you have Obi-Wan with the kind of rock spears behind him, and you've got the moon overhead. It was just it was a gorgeous shot.
It was a
and
gorgeously shot sequence. Oh my
Yeah.
they
God.
got really up and close. That that first little fight. I loved. They were
Yeah.
even back to back at one point. I was like, yes, this is
I
it.
saw
my,
at one point it looked like they were almost holding hands, and someone freeze framed it.
in
and
a
was like,
later fight.
yeah, and just
It
now-
worked.
now kiss.
Yeah.
So
My
there was
favorite
a
part-
moment. There's a moment in their fight in Revenge of the Sith where they kind of lock hands and they're kind of like half grappling, half fighting. I think they were basically locking into that again.
My favorite part, or my favorite thing that I've seen from the fight online, is a meme of Obi-Wan with all the rocks behind him, holding all the rocks up, and
I
it's
think
his line, "I have the high ground."
Yes. I just like how he had his confidence back. He had a lot of
Yeah.
the moves that he had from the prequels. Brings the lightsaber back and does the twirl, and I'm like, there's my old Obi-Wan, and he does the pose. He brought his poses back. He had his, and then he brought some new stuff. He brought some Anakin stuff with the behind the back lightsaber moves and everything, and I'm like, oh, Obi-Wan's got his groove back. I dig it.
Where do you think Anakin got it from?
Right. But it really did feel like it was kind of almost the reverse, of Obi-Wan fighting or sparring with teenage Anakin, and now Obi-Wan almost felt like the younger of the two, because he's definitely the more healthy of the two.
Yeah.
But I did appreciate that Vader moved, and even in that first fight, he tried doing it one-handed, and then he realized, oh no, I got to use two hands with this guy. Like, Obi-Wan's back. And I loved it, because as soon as he started gripping that lightsaber like a bat, I was like, yeah, you need to take him seriously. And that was great. That's great stuff.
It was heart-wrenchingly emotional to see him finally have the conversation with him after he's pretty much downed Vader at that point. But the hardest thing to hear was him calling him Darth instead of calling him Anakin.
Yeah.
And it was hard for a couple reasons. One, because that was really difficult, and two, it was like, well, he can't kill him because there's got to be another set of movies here. But I like to be presented with that situation. I was very upset at that particular part. Like, that actually got me kind of mad, because Obi-Wan had the chance to kill him once already and dropped the ball, and like thought that he had, to be fair, he'd cut off limbs and left him in a fucking pool of lava. Safe to assume he wouldn't have lived through that. But we've got other people who were saying that Reva shouldn't have lived through a gut shot with a lightsaber. I was like, well, yeah, let's look at her boss. But in that moment, like he calls him Darth, and we see that this disconnect is there. It's like the situation where Vader is that vulnerable. I almost can't forgive Obi-Wan for letting him live again. And being like, Obi-Wan, what are you doing? Like, you've seen what he's become. You've seen how evil is. Why are you letting this continue? Like, I understand that you're having a hard time emotionally, but you literally just said, it's like, hey, my friend truly is dead. Goodbye, Darth. And walking away. But like, well, just because he's beaten in that moment doesn't mean that he's not going to come back and expunge that hatred on other people. Like, presenting us with that scene, while emotionally gratifying, and that was when I was crying, was when Obi-Wan was crying and apologizing, all to set up the line of saying, like, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did, to justify Obi-Wan's method of thinking in A New Hope when he explains it to Luke. Like, that wasn't enough. Like, you get presented with that moment and you don't pull that trigger, you are again responsible for everything that he does after the fact.
The way I look at it is that's Obi-Wan taking the path of the Jedi. Like, Jedi,
he explains it to Reva that he took mercy, that you took mercy, so you've honored them. So like he's honored Anakin by showing mercy. But I don't know.
Samuel Jackson was willing to kill Palpatine. That doesn't make him less of a Jedi.
Fair point.
And the thing is, too, that also set up one irritation I had was that the line that Obi-Wan gave was like, "This ends now."
Yeah.
And then he walks away from them.
And then didn't end it. Like,
and then and then didn't end it. But then at the same time, like you said before, that like they had to work with canon with this. Mm-hmm. They were squeezed with canon almost for this show. And that's one of the things that I feel kind of, because I mean, the reason why I said before that this is bottom, like below middle of the pack for, like my feeling towards this whole show is the fact that almost all of these characters, that they end up in something else later on.
Yep.
So there's almost no stakes except for like a few of the characters. Mm-hmm. So like even the Grand Inquisitor, like he gets a gut shot by a lightsaber, and everyone who hasn't seen Rebels is like, oh crap, he's dead. But then everyone who has seen Rebels is, oh, he's showing up later. And I've even had that conversation with at least one person today, where I came across a post that of this guy I know, where he had all of his, he was not a fan of the show. He had all of his complaints listed about it, and that was one of them for him, about the Grand Inquisitor. And the question was like, what purpose did he have other than just coming back as a surprise? Because what's the narrative here for this guy? And he's never seen Rebels, so I mentioned that.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a disservice to his character in Rebels by not like showcasing how sinister he actually is. Like he's a great villain in Rebels.
Him.
Yeah, it's not his story, so you focus on another Inquisitor. And I think down the line, like the fact that they have a live action Inquisitor cast and we still have 10 years of story, or at least 5 years of story for the Inquisitor to tell, I think we could see him again in live action.
We have Andor coming up, which is very much could involve them. I thought
I don't think Andor will involve them at all. I feel like Andor is going to be very no Jedi in this series if they can help it.
Just saying they have other content that could if they wanted to. I think I love that dialogue. I love the fight scene, but I agree that they shouldn't have left it like that. I would not change a single thing about their dialogue. I thought it was just enough. Again, I came to this for the expansion of the depth of their characters. not because I was expecting some big thing, because I knew of the limitations of the show, and I got that depth. I got
did.
that Obi-Wan in tears and the lightsabers reflecting off his eyes because his eyes were so watery. Anakin's voice mixing in with Vader's sound
Oh.
effects was perfect.
Beautiful edit.
And they showed just enough of his face that it's like, is he smiling? You know, when he says things like, "You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did," and I was like,
There was
"Oh my
there was some
God!"
happiness in that. There was some happiness in
That
that tone.
stare, that cheekbone,
Right.
just the way he said it, the way the red and the blues were playing off each other's faces. But I agree, him walking away didn't make sense. And we were talking earlier about editing choices. They could have done something to where, you know,
Super easy.
Vader
fix.
brought something between them, and Kenobi knew that he could either stay and try to fight more, or he had to get going to protect Luke. They could have done something that pulled Kenobi away from his duty, and instead he went willingly. And I never agreed that it was his fault that everything happened after part one, because any other reasonable person would have believed that he would have been dead had the Emperor not saved him. But this was more willingly walking away with the knowledge that it's not just Vader, it's everything Vader controls. It's his whole army that's, you've seen their devastation, you've seen them hunting down other Jedi. So I do agree that they could have done something different, but
The Inquisitors
really
weren't
did like
killing. The Inquisitors weren't killing innocents to draw Jedi out.
yeah, but they were
Like,
killing
they
Jedi.
weren't
He could have at
snapping
least
necks
protected
off.
other Jedi.
Right.
I did.
It would have been an easy fix to just move the vision that he has of Reva chasing down Luke from the ship to the
To
middle
right
of the
then.
duel,
to the
and be
I
like,
can
I
continue
gotta
this.
get out of here. I can't.
Yeah.
Ah,
But I did like that he screamed after him. It reminded me of Darth Maul's
Yeah.
Kenobi, but it was
Mhm.
Obi-Wan instead, and it was very emotional. It was a very emotional scene.
I feel like they could have done, because one of the things about the fight that I really enjoyed was the fact that Obi-Wan went after the control panel on Vader's
Mhm.
chest,
Yes.
and it would have been very easy to show that Kenobi was really back when it came to his, like, self-confidence, is where he would have that vision of, needing to go to Luke and making the split-second decision to bring up the heel of the saber and smash the board and then get out of there.
Mm-hmm. Or something. Yeah.
And
And even
yeah.
your other point, Josh, where they could have brought something between them. It's like they were destroying that planet. Like, just they could have had the force clash between them and create this canyon that they just weren't comfortable jumping at each other towards. Anakin knows how badly that goes, and Obi-Wan knows how well it could go. So like it would have been a super, like they could have had
Where
both.
the rock spear comes down
like-
between them, and
Like
It could
Obi-Wan
have
could have
been-
been
yeah.
like, I need to find a way to get across this. I need to finish this, and then have that vision. They have their conversations like, all right, let's nope out. Like there's just no good way to finish this off. Like I'm in complete agreement. Like that was, it would have been a super easy thing, but I think it came down to the editing.
No.
Have we all seen Rebels?
I have.
It would have been really part of me was expecting, with all those rocks there, just to see Bendu come out and just hear Tom Baker be like, "Hey, shush!" Like just
it definitely mirrored the Ahsoka Vader scene.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But
The
they
crack in
did
the
the
mask, yeah.
crack in the helmet on the other side than they did with that. How many helmets does he have, and who keeps on having to fix them for him? And why couldn't Kylo Ren just get one of the fixed ones instead of hold on to the broken one? But I did like the
Well,
follow-up
he
scene.
didn't require a mask. He was just an
Sure.
emo little shit.
I
So-
meant the Vader mask that he kept around. But I did like the follow-up scene where you do see like an obsessed Vader. He's like, "We will stop at nothing," and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, they got Palpatine there. He's gonna test him. He's gonna be like, and he did. He said just enough to be like, do you serve me, or do you serve yourself, or do you serve him? Are you obsessed with him, or are you gonna be, my a bitch?" And so he kneels.
I would have
He
loved to
kneels.
hear the Emperor use those exact words.
Yeah. I did like that because it was like, well, so does, you know, after all this, I was like, how the whole series, now that they're kind of being forced back together, I was like, how are you going to convince me that Vader didn't just hunt this dude down until episode 4? And they just with a couple little lines, he was back in check. It was like, you're supposed to be working for me, not going off and doing your own little vengeance thing, and that was enough for me to be like, okay, Obi-Wan can go back to Tatooine, and it, I won't be like, oh, that doesn't make sense that Vader wouldn't just hunt him down.
To one of the thoughts that I had about another aspect of this show, and that's between Obi-Wan and Leia and that whole part of the show.
Mhm.
I truly feel that the subtitle for this series should be, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, how Leia named her kid Ben. Or something along those lines. Because I truly feel like this is why, like, part of me being a little cynical about it is that I feel like this show explains how Ben got his name. And that relationship between Leia and Obi-Wan.
Yeah, because why would why can't I think? Why would Harrison Ford name his
Solo?
kid Ben? Yeah, I don't know why I was blanking. What? I did always wonder that. Like, why would Han Solo want to name his kid Ben? Like, he had no connection to this dude.
I mean,
Well,
before
there was another thing. Like, it was. Oh, go ahead, Alan.
before this show, like my whole thing was like, well, Ben was the reason they met in the first place, so like they're just being sentimental for that. But now it's like a whole new, like Ryan was saying, a whole new context to that, and I like it a lot more. Like I like that. I like this. Yeah.
That was what we talked about, like when we said that this show kind of added, like, it kind of changes the way that you watch other pieces of Star Wars content now. Like, it changes the message that she sends him through R2-D2 in A New Hope. But like, it makes a lot more sense that she would reach out
to it.
It makes a lot more sense that she would reach out to him now, instead of it just being like an old war buddy of her father's. Like, he's somebody who saved her before, and she brought in the message of him like helping her out during the Clone Wars to kind of like help preserve some secrecy or something like that. Like it's so easy.
Your
to
final
kind of,
talk in this talked
that.
about, you can reach out to me if you need help, but we need to be careful. And everybody was like, oh, the way she addresses him in A New Hope doesn't make sense with this show. Well, it does if the last time you talked to him was, we need to be careful about how we talk to each other, and then she grows into that, knowing that she could reach out to him, but she needs to be a little vague on who he is and everything. Not, hey, remember when you were Jedi and we used to hang out? Can you come do that again? She already knows at the end of this show that she shouldn't say that. So I did like that little convo they had, that little exchange.
And then it adds like a level of like grief that she was probably going through when he died, but she was like trying to address Luke's at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's how bad she must have felt by finding out, like, she was so excited to find out that Ben Kenobi was there to help her out, and then to like the first time that she sees him and who knows how long he gets killed. Like, yeah, she did a good job of like she didn't want to show any weakness in that moment. Like, it's so easy to kind of like have like a deeper context to future content now, and it's great.
And it even adds a level of depth to Obi-Wan's sacrifice on the Death Star, because he's not only protecting Luke, he's protecting Leia.
Yeah. Anybody that says, I saw a tweet on there's this guy that I really do like, and he's for some reason he just hated this show. He hated it. And he was like, how are you gonna write a show about Obi-Wan and forget to have it be about Obi-Wan? And I was like, what show did you watch? Because this was about Obi-Wan. He was very prominent in every episode. And yes, there were other people there, but at the end, you saw a very broken man in the beginning get his groove back in multiple ways. Not only did he get the Force back, he got his sense of life back, he got his style back, he even dressed more confidently at the end. He got his smile back. He went and saw Barry Smits and gave him a hug at the end of this.
Barry
Barry Smits, what's his name? What's his
Jimmy
name? It's
Smits.
not Barry. Jimmy Smits. Leia gave him his heart back, and then he took that back to Tatooine, not as a broken man that just has to watch from afar, but someone who's gonna trust Owen, and he'll still be around. But this was character development for him. Like
maybe the guy who watched that, maybe the guy who tweeted that watched like that George Clooney movie with Ewan McGregor called the Men Who Stare at Goats, where they call him Jedi.
Yeah.
Like,
He listed
just like,
he had 3 tweets of things that he listed that he wanted this show to address. And I was like, no, man, you don't need it. Like, I am perfectly fine with this show not having a crazy impact on the universe of Star Wars. This show, to me, call it filler if you want, but it felt like character development. It felt like at the end of it, it fit between the prequels and where we see him next. And if we never get more, we just got a little bit more of him and Anakin, and that's all I wanted.
Yeah.
And I freely admit that it's not the best show, but you can't tell me it's not about Obi-Wan and it didn't add more depth to his character.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like there should have been more, but they didn't do a terrible job with what they actually did present.
Yeah, because I mean, for me, what this show boils down to is it shows how Obi-Wan went from at the end of Revenge of the Sith in Episode 3 to the like happy-go-lucky hermit at the beginning of New Hope, because because I mean, at the end of Episode 3, I mean, he's devastated. Everything that he's worked for, everything that he's believed in is just gone, devastated. Friends are dead. So, I mean, he's going to be exactly who they showed in the first episode. Filleting fish?
Yeah.
Desert fish? Something like that?
Creature.
I mean, it's
Some sort of creature.
that looked like
even
really
the,
good
even the
salmon.
dickhead foreman got
It did
his
look
too.
like good salmon. It looked like
that
salty,
looked like some really
salmon.
good salmon. Like, I would have loved to get sushi from that thing. But anyway, I mean, to go from that to, seeing Qui-Gon at the end, like that character transition. For me, if that's all this show does for me is just fill that out, it did its job. But at the same time, it also, for now on, whenever I watch A New Hope and I see Leia holding that blaster around the corner right before she stuns the stormtroopers, I'm going to think of the conversation of her getting the holster from Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And that felt more sentimental. I don't know if that's the exact holster that she's wearing in that.
Oh, I doubt it.
That felt more sentimental to me than how did Han get those floating dice, in the Millennium Falcon, what they did in Solo. I hate callback shit like that. But this didn't feel like that. This felt sentimental to you be a princess, but you also be a rebel, and I love that. I love that he gave her that, and that she wore it at the end, and that her dad was like, yeah, we're gonna change things together, and you're perfectly fine wearing that. I just love that.
She put Lola in the holster. It was a little droid holster. That was fucking adorable.
But that, like, to me, that's even better because the callback is her personality. Yeah. It's not a thing. It's her, and it's who she grows into be, and that's and so yeah. I mean, those were the biggest things that I liked about this show.
Yeah, kudos again to that kid.
Yeah.
Child actor is fantastic.
And there's a bunch of stuff, like I say that I wish I had seen more, but there are, like, in every piece of media that's out there should be questions that don't get answers. Like there's like there's certainly some questions that absolutely should have answers because it like helps align the plot better. But there are certain things that we should not have the answers to. And and that kind of like leaves like I mean Star Wars Theory on YouTube goes in depth in some of the craziest. Sometimes he's like really overreaching, but like I love watching his content. And like every single time they open another door in the creative canon that they can go to and sort of like fill in some of these contexts, it adds more that fans could use to kind of like spin off on their own stuff. Or and by fans, that includes authors of books that are going to continue to write the canon, comic book artists, like other maybe other film properties. Like there's so many other aspects now that get opened up every single time they add something like this. So when they do a good job like they did here, like yes, it could have been better, but like also didn't do a terrible job. The door is again open to see more like, and I don't want to see another show around these characters or anything like that, but like if the people who do want that extra bit of context, now they've laid down the groundwork for basically a bunch of writing prompts for other pieces of media.
Yeah. So before I ask my last question for the show, let's talk a bit about Qui-Gon returning. What do you guys think of Liam Neeson as a Force ghost?
Well, Seth called it the other night. We talked him down, but Seth was the one that said, what, 70-30 that we'd see him in person?
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, God damn it, Seth was right.
Well, you talked me down at that point because you're like, well, he didn't find a way to become a full ghost. But it was like, well, in the 10 years that he had fucking around as the Force entity, probably would have figured it out.
Yeah, I forget. I'm gonna have to look up
20 years.
I'm gonna have to look up who the TikToker is, but there's a TikTok Star Wars account that is just a puppet talking about Star Wars lore, and he quite straight up said, like, I'm fine with them breaking canon and having Force ghosts learn after they die. Like, that's fine.
Did they break canon?
Well, if they're willing to, if they're able to
Anakin
train
didn't know.
somebody, they're able to learn some of this
Yeah.
shit. Like,
But
come on.
Did Anakin know how to Force ghost himself? Because he shows up in Return of the Jedi.
Dude, Anakin was the chosen one. So, I mean, if anybody has the ability to figure something like
so
that out,
Mary
it'd be
Sue
him.
I guess, but still, I mean, that would fly in the face of you need specific training before you die. And I mean, unless
Who knows what he was
Palpatine
looking
trained him how
into,
to do
though?
that.
I mean, like,
I guess Palpatine was hinting at.
so
Well,
there's
no,
some
he was hinting at revival, not life after death.
there's some great lore surrounding like some of the stuff that Vader does. And I don't know if it's canon anymore because I can't remember where I read it. But it was an online comic where he's basically going through and trying to find like old Sith artifacts and whatnot. And it might have even been fan fiction, but he runs into like an artifact that lets him communicate with one of the ancient Sith lords. And I remember being so appealed by this because it was a connection to like the old Republic era, but even the Sith Lord who was there, it was like even older than that. And I can't remember the Lord that he communicated with like right off the bat, but he communicates with a Sith Lord as a Force ghost, which in a lot of Star Wars canon, Sith can't do that. But it never really made sense to me because like if they can if they can use the Force, they would certainly be able to kind of like cross that line. And so to have like again, that's one of those unanswered questions that we don't necessarily need the answer to, but it opens up the door for people to write lore around like around like artifact search. Like Vader did a lot of stuff because Palpatine straight up would not work with him on how to like preserve life. He didn't feel the need to anymore because Padme had already died. But Vader was like trying to do a bunch of other things because Palpatine was more or less using him as a pawn rather than actually training him in anything.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the stuff that he learned after the fact was through his own ambitions.
Personally, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, the just like you said, some things don't need to be answered, and I feel like that's one of them. When it comes to the actual, like, I almost want to use the word dogma-ish, like the dogma of the Force and like how it's used and how the Jedi see it and how the Sith use it. It's one of those things that like no one really knows the answer to until you do, pass away and then end up being part of the Force. And you don't really know until you're at that point at the same time. So no one really living really knows if it's, if you need to learn how to become a Force ghost before, or is it that if you become so strong with the Force, regardless of which way you go, that after you like pass away, you can still learn it anyway? Like, it's one of those things that I feel like, because it's on that death threshold, it's one of those things that I'm fine with them never really giving an answer to.
It was like they touched on it in the Clone Wars, kind of the
Yeah.
most extensively that anybody has, and even at that point, it was still only Master Yoda who actually had any real like great understanding of it.
Yeah,
But as we have seen in almost every piece of Star Wars content henceforth, Force ghosts and the previous, like the souls of Jedi who have passed, do still have interactions, whether or not they're whether or not they've physically manifested themselves at one point or another. So who knows what the Jedi afterlife consists of, whether or not they're given that option or not.
As far as the Darth Vader becoming a Force ghost thing, my head canon has always been and will remain until they show me otherwise, that Qui-Gon is the one who trained Vader to become a Force ghost, because I could absolutely see him training Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin to do it, even though Anakin's on the dark side now. Like, I could see him teaching him.
Qui-Gon was more about like following the will of the Force rather than the will of anything else. And Qui-Gon, especially in the Clone Wars, was also pretty adamant about having Anakin be a part of the Force manifestation, those living manifestations of the Force, and being like that balance between those two. And Qui-Gon had such a strong connection to Anakin as a boy, to believe that Qui-Gon wouldn't spend any time trying to interact with him at all is kind of asinine to me. I was like, there's no way that Qui-Gon, who deliberately defied the council on many different occasions, wouldn't do something like that. So that is a great theory.
Yeah,
that's something that that would have occurred.
I like seeing him.
I really love that concept. Actually,
I liked seeing him. I liked that they held it off to that last point, that he wasn't there in the beginning when Obi-Wan needed to find himself before he found his master. Like, it just made sense now looking back that this is when he would reveal himself, and was like, I was always here, you just needed to learn how to look, and I've seen people that are like, yeah, season 2, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan back together, and I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want a season.
Bad Boys 2.
That is not.
I don't think we're gonna see it.
It's not. It felt to me like it was more of a send-off than a teaser for season 2. I could see Kathleen Kennedy, she teased it out. I could see somebody saying, well, we left the door open. But I could also see somebody saying, well, episode 4 is down the line, so we left it open for that. I'd rather we not get any more.
In defense of Kathleen Kennedy, she's not the only one saying that. Deborah Cho is saying that. Ewan McGregor is saying that. Hayden Christensen's definitely on board to come back as Vader. And I think if anything, we're going to get a Vader show out of this.
Yeah.
Or
I think it would be criminally misrepresented.
Hasn't it also been rumored that he's going to be a part of Ahsoka?
More or less confirmed.
Probably flashbacks.
In some flashback form.
Or Force Ghost if you're going post-Jedi.
True.
Yeah.
I think it would be criminal not to give Vader a show covering various aspects of what he's done.
And again, I have heard other people say, gosh, Vader is good because we aren't oversaturated with him. And saying, could Vader show, how many times could we see Vader and his cape and his walk before it's too much Vader? And I kind of get that. I kind of get that.
Yeah,
idea.
And my thing, and this gets into how, like, being online, not really being in the trenches of the discussions that happen online, but just being, like, an observer of them, I really wish that they would create a show, like, make a Vader show that dives into things that he does that we don't really, see him doing when it comes to working with the Empire and being this general. But have it that you don't need to watch it if you don't want to. That if you don't watch it, it doesn't really affect any other medium. So that for people who want to watch it, they can and enjoy it. And for people who don't want to watch it, have to deal with somebody going, what, you didn't watch the show? That explains everything that happened just now. Because
that's kind of how I feel about Obi-Wan, though. People could skip Obi-Wan and not miss out on anything.
That's why I was fine with it.
Yeah.
If they were going to do a Vader show, though, the big thing that they need to do is not go any further into humanizing him than they did in this show.
Yeah.
Like, he needs to be the bad guy. He needs to
dehumanize him at the end.
He needs to do a bunch of bad shit. He needs to be the villain.
Yeah.
And so if they're going to do a Vader show, they need to
killing more kids. He killed more kids in this show, so
they need to make sure that he stays the villain of Reckon.
I will say I think the Marvel comics that have come out in the Disney era that focus on Vader have done a good job of balancing the villain with the human, the Anakin side of him. Because we talked a bit on Tuesday about the moment Vader finds out he has a son. There's been a comic run recently where Vader visits the Padme's tomb and runs into one of her handmaidens. So you deal with that. I think there's a way to strike a balance there. So I think it could completely be done in a limited series.
Yeah. That thing where he runs into one of her handmaidens is an excellent piece of media, though. So
I need to read that.
Yeah. Alan, I know you said you were about to ask your final question before wrapping this up. Can I ask one thing real quick? I wanted to, because I've seen a lot of different takes on this. What did you guys think of the lightsabers in this show? Because a lot of people have been like, the fight scenes looked like fan fiction because the lightsabers were so much brighter than they were in previous media, or they looked more like light up tubes and beams of light as they have in previous forms. I tried not to look at it, but definitely in the final episode, whenever you would see the lightsaber straight on, like the hilt would be more lit up, and it did look different than previous iterations. But I made it through Rebels with the little,
this sounds like a production. This actually sounds like a production thing.
Yeah. I just want to get you guys' takes. What did you think that was distracting, or did you care?
I think that instead of doing the hilt with the interchangeable metal rod that they were using for the prequels, it was not colored. It was just a metal rod. Like they're actually straight up using like the polymer blades that you could use for something else to get a more natural lit look rather than something artificial that they have to add in later.
Yeah, that's absolutely
that might have just been a side effect of that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. They've been doing that since The Force Awakens. And I think it's looked great in everything. I think if anything in Obi-Wan, the colors were a bit oversaturated for the lightsabers.
It was always dark as shit when they had the lightsabers on, though. So they were just filling the scene.
But I can see, like, you can really tell that they're very bright in this, and I think that is just because of the darkness.
Yeah, and I'm so used to the lightsabers changing from era to era that
they have changed.
That
they really do.
that a little change or a change in lighting or how heavy they seem, it doesn't. I don't even notice it. I don't really even.
It didn't spoil it for me, and like I said, I did make it through Rebels where they were like more rapiers than full on blades. Like they were thin, they were tiny.
Yeah,
there's a gamble. There's a gamble word if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, but they were. But in this, I did see a couple times where it looked more like a light up tube than, say, Kylo Ren's lightsaber, where it was just like this constant surge of light, But it wasn't enough to be like, oh, ruin the scene, I think that those claims are a little over the top.
There wasn't quite as much flicker or pulsing of the light in the sabers, but honestly, it was such a small thing that I didn't even register on my radar.
That's what happens when the Empire has the money to hire Honda and Toyota to make lightsabers. You get, a solid. But prior to Alan, just one thing I want to add real quick. The whole thing about the Force Ghosts. I had the thought when we were talking about it. I feel like it also has to do with the person viewing the Force Ghost. I feel like it's not just I feel like it's not just the Jedi themselves as Force Ghosts being able to appear to people because they know how to do it. I feel like the viewers need to be have a certain knowledge of the Force. Yeah, you need to be ready, but at the same time also be at a certain knowledge level to be able to actually see them too. I feel like it's like a 50-50 thing.
But you've got Luke who saw Ben Kenobi with almost like no effort in Empire Strikes Back. Like his training was very much not complete.
No, it was Luke.
Point in time.
Luke.
Yeah, it was Luke. That's fair. The actual chosen one.
Yeah. Real quick, while we wait for Josh to come back, let's just appreciate how far lightsabers have come since 2005 and compare mine with Seth's here. Like, this is one of those plastic ones from the Revenge of the Sith era, and then
this is what actually. Let me grab a proper one here.
Yeah. Seth bought like 7 lightsabers at Planet Comic-Con this year.
Oh, yeah,
he's got plenty.
Yeah, I went pretty crazy in at the Ultra Sabers booth. So
nice.
I got a little aggressive. But yeah, I wanted some cool desk toy shit and stuff to put on the shelf. So I got.
I know the feeling.
Actually, I got it. I'll just do it. I'll just do it because Josh spoiled it already.
Oh my god!
Problem. Look at all that.
Just a little bit of a.
So,
bit of a problem.
As he's doing that,
I have it slightly. All right, I'll clean that up later.
It's my high school, our senior prank. A bunch of the seniors got together. I'm talking like 30, 40, 50 people. Got together and they had a massive lightsaber fight with 2004, 2005 type lightsabers outside in front of the school, to where all 3 of our adult security guards had to come out and said, okay, 5 more minutes, but then you guys have to stop.
Like, what are you gonna do, security guard? We got fucking lightsabers. You got road cones.
Seth, I want you to find a way to incorporate General Grievous into displaying those. Like, however you keep them, like whether it's just a bag with Grievous's face on it, just like a fine collection that you have there. So,
yeah.
A silhouette of Grievous holding up a trench coat and then having them all displayed just like they're hanging on the inside of the coat.
Yes. I like it. I like it.
I could do it.
Yeah.
So what was your final question
so
there?
we kind of touched on my final question, which was going to be, do you want to see a second season of this? So instead, my last question is going to be, what was your favorite moment of the series? Because as much as I love, like, obviously we all enjoyed the battle between Vader and Obi-Wan, but I think my favorite moment of the show was that last interaction between Obi-Wan and Leia, where he says what she got from her mother and what she got from her father. Like that got me crying again. Like that made me tear up. That was such a beautiful moment between those characters and such a tribute to Anakin and Padme. I need to go back and watch it again because I don't think Across the Stars was playing there, but it should have been. Just a little beat of that, but that was my favorite moment of the series.
It was even more beautiful because, like, after she hears all that, she turns and she looks at her adoptive parents as if, I know. Like, all right, I know already. Yeah. Like, as if he was describing them instead of Anakin and Padme. Like, it was like a validation of her adoption and being like, hey, these are my real parents. Like, that's absolutely who it belongs to.
She didn't need more.
There was a great double meaning in there, and it was beautiful. Like, I gotta say that like the ending sequence where Obi-Wan gets to interact with both Luke and Leia were were probably the top.
Oh
for me.
yeah.
Finally said it. Hello there.
Yeah.
Uh,
And not just because he said hello there, but more because he never got to meet Luke up to that point.
Yeah.
He held him as a baby, and then he was just a watcher from that point. And then he finally gets to meet him, and he hands him the toy that he had originally gotten for him. And yeah,
Owen
that was
for a
beautiful.
second wasn't just a grubby cripple. Like he was he was nice for a second, for a split second. I other than the dialogue between the two after the final fight, and just McGregor's emotions in that scene, which was, I think, my favorite part in general are his emotions in this show. But other than that scene, the PTSD scene in the end of the second episode when he learns that Anakin is alive was just compelling. I mean, because that is what I wanted from this show. I wanted to know, how does he get from thinking Anakin is dead to just knowing that that Vader is out there in episode 4. I wanted something to fill that gap, and and I even, like, it took me a minute to realize it. Like, I went into this knowing what came before and knowing what came after, and I had completely wiped my mind of the fact that he did not know Anakin was alive. And when that scene happened, I was like, oh my God, look at his face. And then it all just hit me, and I was like, oh, that was a very emotional scene. And his PTSD in his face, and 10 years later not knowing that his apprentice is alive, and the Darth Vader is alive. I love that moment. That was a strong moment, and it made sense why they dropped the first 2 episodes, because that, to end your first watch on that point, oh, that was great. It was really great.
Which would have been an even richer thing if we had more episodes where he had moments where he thought he could see him, but it was him like outside of the armor and all that, because he didn't know that was what happened. Like, because like that first visual that he had when they were in that desert area where he saw full on Anakin just standing there in a cloak and he was like hallucinating. I was like, oh shit, okay, I hope we see more of that. Like, because like the way he dealt with it was very compelling. Ryan, what was yours?
This is gonna be weird. This is gonna be weird, but I have to say it's the mundane Obi-Wan's life working at the carcass on a factory line, and then just showing that whole experience of him, like going to work, clocking out. Yeah,
repetition.
His repetition, like just showing what everyday life is like for anyone living in the Star Wars universe that's not part of that, isn't lucky enough or unfortunate enough not to be part of the Skywalker's storyline.
Yeah.
My
Not
most
exactly lucky.
Yeah, exactly. My most disappointing thing about the series, though, is I was really expecting Flea to be in it a lot more than what he was, with all of the like media there was about Flea being in this series. I'm like, oh, cool. And I was like, he's a kidnapper that shows up for 5 minutes. Yay.
I didn't see any media that he was going to be in this show.
Yeah,
I've got a lot of like music stuff on my Facebook feed, and so I would say for like every just general Star Wars excitement ad or post I saw for Obi-Wan Kenobi, I saw an article from like some music magazine talking about how Flea's gonna be in Star Wars, and then I mean, he got a few lines. I'm happy about that.
He's in 2 episodes. Yeah,
he's in 2 episodes. He has got like 5, or at least I would say at least 4.5 minutes of screen time, maybe 3.
He had some one-on-one with Obi-Wan. You're bleeding all over my floor. It was good.
I'm sad he didn't have any like. I'm sad he wasn't more crazy and had some like Donnie Thornberry moments, but it's okay.
I mean, it's just I was expecting, because it's Flea, I was expecting more that they would do with him, but I guess they poured all that into his costume. So I guess they poured.
And he met his worst enemy, low-hanging trees.
Low hanging trees and apparently not a lot of cardio practice.
Yeah, no.
To be
Got
fair,
it.
those were his minions. He didn't really chase after.
him and his
showed
crew.
up at
No,
the
he
end.
didn't.
Yeah.
He was really kind of moseying through that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
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 All right.
Fair enough.
We all give our favorite moments then. Okay.
That kind of wraps it for me. I could go on and on and on, but
Yeah, I think that's a good place
I
to
don't-
put a pin in it for now. Next Star Wars
hopefully
series is-
forever.
yeah.
Hopefully forever. No
Well,
more Obi-Wan series.
There's going to
No
be
more
more
Obi-Wan
Star Wars
series. Sure.
But one thing, real quick. I will say, Tuesday we all expected this to end as a major plug for another show, and it didn't. Granted, it kind of left the door open if they wanted to do a sequel series, but I do have to give them props for resisting to be like, and now we're gonna throw in this. That's hint, hint. Here's the next show. You know, like it was fairly contained. That they showed resistance at the end to not overly plug another show.
Until they announce Reva's show.
Well, I think they did that in the beginning of the episode. I wouldn't be surprised to see O'Shea Jackson Jr. show up in Andor.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got a
Ice Cube's good. Yeah.
Ice Cube Jr. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see him show up. Hell, even Kumail showing up on there wouldn't be a surprise to me.
I did like him. He was great in the show, Ice Cube Jr. I did like him. I
but
should learn his name. What's his name? O'Shea Jackson Jr. That's his name. I did like him.
He didn't get a lot, but I liked what he was involved in.
Mm-hmm.
And if the rumors are true about a certain actress joining Star Wars soon, I wouldn't be surprised to see another character a little bit older down the line. So,
who are we talking about?
Millie Bobby Brown is rumored to be joining Star Wars.
No.
Probably an older Leia. God damn it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
I would rather.
No, it
them
doesn't really make
just-
sense because Millie Bobby Brown is at about the age that Carrie Fisher was when she played her in A New Hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's
Like,
playing
she
a
is the age,
teenager
yeah.
in high school in Stranger Things right now. She doesn't look like a teenager with yeah.
She doesn't know she was playing a teenager. She found out during press that 11 is supposed to be 14 and she was shocked. So, yeah.
Okay.
They're freshmen in high school.
Yeah. Does she not know
She's
what
British.
high school is? Okay. True.
We'll ask Devin about it next week when he's on, like how high school works over there, and see why she was confused.
No. Yes. I mean, yes, because I like chaos, and no, because I don't want to deal with it.
All right. Josh, Seth, where can people find you guys online?
You can find us at Nerfhearders Assemble on pretty much every platform out there, but we are prominently active on YouTube. We post our live shows there, and on the off chance that we make an actual pre-recorded anything, it ends up on YouTube as well. But we also our stream also does show up on Facebook, so if you for whatever reason decide that you like Facebook live streams more than YouTube's, you can catch us there. And yeah, YouTube will be pretty much the best place to follow us to kind of keep up on everything that's going on, as long as you're hitting that notification bell so you actually get notified when we go live.
Okay. Outside of Nerfhearders, where can people find you guys online?
Okay. You can find me at Jones on the Lens, all one word, LENS, proper spelling of lens, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I do mainly photography on those. It's not always safe for work though, so enter with caution. And that's pretty much the only platforms that I'm available. You can also you can see my gallery at jonesonTheLens.com.
Okay.
So
Josh,
depends on the work if it's not safe for work. It depends on what your work is.
It does, but it's all in that one place. So it's risky.
You can find me at Fierce Lit or fierceliterature.com. You can find me on Twitter bitching about one thing or another, and I have no shows coming up for a while. I was supposed to be at Smallville Con last weekend, but I had some family stuff last minute that kept me from going there. It looked like a good time. my next show, unless something comes up, is not until October, which gives me some time to knock out some projects and really dig deep. So hopefully you can find both Alan and I at that next show in New York. And one day Seth, when I can convince him to come out to New York. But
I mean, it's not after Kansas City. It won't be hard to convince me. So I just got to pay to get out there.
We'll just have a party. We'll just have Alan, me, and Seth and behind a booth. That sounds like a good time. With Battle of the Beards.
Yeah. In the meantime, you can find Ryan and I this weekend at Main Street Comic Con in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. It's just as exciting as New York Comic Con, I'm sure. But
same thing.
We will be back. We will be back to our normal schedule next week, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, with Devin's pick that was supposed to be the pick this week, with Elvis hitting theaters. We're talking about another Baz Luhrmann film, Moulin Rouge, which I have never seen. So we're going to keep the Ewan McGregor train going with Moulin Rouge next week.
Real Big Fish. Throw that in there somewhere.
I don't get that. Like, I've never seen it.
It's another movie.
I thought you
Ewan
have.
McGregor movie.
No, I've never seen it. Oh, Big Fish. Okay. I thought you meant like the ska band, like Real Big Fish.
No, Big Fish.
Big Fish, yeah. Oh, I love Big Fish.
You also need to
real
see
Big Fish. It's just Big Fish.
The Killer's music video for Mr. Brightside. It's very much in the vein of Moulin Rouge. In fact, it's basically Moulin Rouge. So if you don't have time to watch the whole movie, just watch that.
Okay.
Oh, and watch The Men Who Stare at Goats so you can understand what that douche that Josh was following on Twitter was talking about this being the Last Jedi movie.
You can find You Have to Watch This podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, and our website, rumrunnerspodcastnetwork.com. Until next time, thank you again for joining us, Seth and Josh. Make sure to check out their YouTube channel, Nerfhearders Assemble. Until next time, for You Have to Watch This podcast, I'm Alan.
I'm Ryan.
And
I'm Josh.
Yep.
I'm fucking Seth, and I'm late to that party.
And may the force be with you.